Hello everyone, this is Jim Okerzinski with a special edition instructional video about assignment number 1 and also about assignment number 2. So just to take a look at the schedule over the next couple of weeks, there is some room besides the team building activity, the jobs package, which is the cover letter, resume, and follow-up is a straightforward assignment. It should be not that demanding. If you have some experience with pulling together some resumes, as some of you have indicated. So what I want to get to today and in this video is just to review some of the strategies and techniques that we talked about in chapter 2. We'll carry a little bit over into chapter 7 to help with any revisions that you might have about assignment 1 or assignment number 2. So just to take a quick look here at the quick chapter 2 quick reference guide. All right, I just want to point out that much of the strategies and techniques we've talked about already. It just comes down to a question of refreshing your knowledge base with those strategies, like writing an opening, writing a closing. We've compiled all of these, or I should say, we've compiled from our first team building activity about writing an opening and writing a closing. And so, to get to the textbook here in chapter 2, we have a distinct ability to click through and look through your particular chapters on page 44, where the book talks about writing an opening, and is much the same as the quick reference guide that we have in our drive folder. The opening statement of your writing should identify your subject, provide any necessary context, and focuses the audience's attention. So it's critical to keep thinking about a 3-paragraph structure when you write business communication at a minimum, So you have to look at how you go about writing an opening. In some of the correspondence and in assignment 2, there was one sentence. One sentence is the opening. And if you look at the items that I just talked about here, and they are also highlighted in the quick reference guide, all right, about how to go about the opening, then there should be more context for your opening of your business correspondence. So also the opening should state what series of events led you to the need to write or to answer a request, to recommend a new procedure, to propose a new employee being hired, or to pass along information. You have to give the audience some context as to why you're writing your communication. So writing an opening is critical in looking at how you've written your openings. And also chapter 2 talks about writing the closing. So a good closing is concise and ends your writing emphatically. It can tie your points together in a number of ways, recommending a course of action, offering a value, judgment, speculating on implications, summarizing main points. Sometimes the closing is, if I can be of any further help, please call me, or I would appreciate your comments. You want to make what I call a goodwill closing. You want to close on a positive note. So really try to think about how you want to have a goodwill type of closing. Now, even in a complaint letter, all right, even in the complaint letter, it is important to determine that you want to leave some sort of a goodwill closing. You want to provide and maintain a business relationship in the complaint letter and a correspondence assignment. You need your booklets. You need a printer. Okay, so you want to give them the opportunity to correct the wrong, but at the same time maintain a relationship in their cooperation so that you can get your booklets. Sometimes finding a new printer, getting new proofs takes a lot longer than just trying to salvage a relationship and correct the problem, right? One thing I do want to point out in all of the emails and correspondence is the level of proofreading, okay? Final opportunity to review your content for accuracy, sentence level corrections, grammar, punctuation, mechanics. Okay, I've seen a lot of grammar and punctuation issues in some of the final drafts that are uploaded. One thing that kind of is my pet peeve, and I'll say this straight up front, is improper capitalization. In any business correspondence, capitalizing correctly is essential. Street names, proper names, you don't capitalize the word after a comma when you open with a dependent clause. It just doesn't happen. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are aware of proper capitalization. If you are unsure, then you need to use some of the tools out on the internet to make sure that you capitalize properly. I shouldn't see a lowercase I. I shouldn't see a lowercase street name or a city name in any business correspondence. I want to be clear about this. So you have to make sure before you upload your final draft, just like clicking the send button or stuffing a letter in an envelope, you must be sure, okay, you must be sure that you have everything accurately proofed. And it might take several looks to go through it. You might even ask somebody if there is some help. But even the peer review process is somewhat dealing with the holistic issues. It's not the proofing, because if you have to change content, then what happens is then that proofing or that editing is gone away, right? So I want to move on to chapter 7 and take a look at some of the categories that we talked about strategies and chapter 7 here about style and tone, right? We always want to be able to use a style and a tone depending upon your particular audience. You know, the email assignment can be a more informal tone. However, some of the letters that in correspondence assignment number 2 is more of a formal tone because it is a complaint between business companies and organizations. So you always want to look at the goodwill and the you viewpoint. It's really important here that writing concisely, but do not be so blunt that you risk losing the reader's goodwill. I mean, you have to engage your audience. You have to bring them into the reason you're writing. All right, so you don't want to be too blunt. And there was a couple of complaint letters, rightly so, that demand that something be taken care of immediately. Well, it may feel like it is an aggravating situation and that's the way you want to express yourself. However, understanding the goodwill and the you viewpoint will not elicit any cooperation. Sometimes not all aspects of business in our society are disposable, that you can just go on to find another printing company. You have to salvage a situation or a relationship, and I think it's somewhat important, especially if, you know, the book talks about high stakes refusals, like if you have a lot at stake on a particular business communication, right? So you want to take a look at the goodwill and you viewpoint on 246 in chapter 7. Get an idea of how you want to build goodwill, whether it's a goodwill closing, as I always say, and how you want to also be able to talk about establishing and moving forward as a course of action. So I got openings and closings again. Let me see, where are my direct and indirect patterns? Here we go. So I mentioned this, and we've covered this in the chapter 7. I know I talked about it in the lecture about direct and indirect patterns. So a direct pattern is critical when you're going to deliver usually good news. You want to get straight to the point. A direct pattern might be excellent in your inquiry letter or in your response to an inquiry. Those are pretty straightforward communications, as we see here in figure 7.2. You have the 3-paragraph format. Okay, so you need to have the opening, the closing, and then the explanation here in the middle. It's important all of your emails or your letters should be at least in this basic format here in that 3-paragraph structure. The indirect pattern may be effective when you need to present especially sensitive or negative messages. Okay, bad news. The complaint letter to Robert Mason about the shipment is really bad news. So you might want to think about the indirect pattern and providing the context for your demand that it be corrected, but yet establishing and maintaining a relationship, right? So think about how to go about your opening in an indirect pattern. So the indirect pattern for such bad news correspondence allows the explanation or details to lead logically and tactfully to the negative message as in the following pattern, right? So take a look at page 250 in chapter 7, right? The opening, traditionally called a buffer, should provide the context for the subject and establish a professional tone. Well, Mr. Mason, we have had a good business relationship in the past. However, our recent shipment or the recent 2 shipments, however you want to phrase it, is really critical to set the stage for what you want to discuss in your particular instance, in your particular letter, and how you want to phrase that, right? So it's always important to look at that. And it's the same thing like even in the reply letter back, you have to be pretty much direct. Fess up. You know, when Robert Mason writes the letter back to Nancy Rybold at Global about how he's going to solve that, you need to apologize and then be able to move through the direct pattern in discussing that particular correspondence. All right. All right. So take a look in your textbook, refresh your memory there. Also, I want to point out the quick reference guide here I put together in the Drive folder, right? Quick reference guide, refresh your knowledge base on that. Also, I want to point out that in the email assignment tab here, I have my answer key. It's a PDF format. It'll give you the idea of, once again, how we have the 3-paragraph structure, opening, body, closing. You can look through these if you want to revise. I'm hoping that nobody plagiarizes this, but this gives you an idea of what the opening should look like, what the body should look like, how to use the bullet points along with the information, create an easy and quick read while covering all the bases. It's a great way to take a look at this and be aware of the structure for your revisions for assignment number 1. Let me get back to my folder here. Let's see, Drive folder. I don't know if I've uploaded the correspondence one yet. I don't think I did, but I will upload the correspondence answer key. I have an examples for the first 3 letters. Okay, if you want to revise, I'll post that in the folder. It's the exact 3 that I covered in class that is on the recording. Some people I know, based upon their assignments that I've graded so far, that they were able to stop that recording and go back and look at it. I'll have that in a folder here. So we've got a couple of moderately busy weeks here. I suggest to everyone that you look to revise these assignments. The assignment are open in Blackboard. Make your revisions, upload a new GDoc link to that assignment, and I will reassess. And once again, you get the higher of the grade. So this is entirely up to you, and I suggest this is a good time to do that. All right. If you have any questions about this, revisions or structures of the video or anything in the way of assignments, just send me an email or mention it in class. Thank you.